what this whole lesson is about is learning to look at something and break it down into shapes, especially when we're doing our contour drawing. And I'm going to start by just finding the most obvious shape here. So I'm trying to find the most obvious shape first in this sunflower, which is going to be the circle. So I'm going to go around and just get a feel for it. And so whatever image that you've chosen to draw from, try to find that focal point, that shape that stands out to you most. So that's the most obvious shape. But then if you look at it, you can tell that there's like a bigger circle shape that's going around the outside of our object. It's not a perfect circle, as you can tell as I'm going around here trying to do it quickly. But that's okay. It's a circle shape nonetheless, because this is what you want to look for when you're breaking out your composition and trying to figure out where you're going to put everything on your paper. Now, I will tell you that on my paper, the first thing I did was to put some really light lines, and I'm just going to make them dark for you guys so you can see what I'm talking about, to figure out where the middle of my paper is, and that will help you in laying out your composition. So I do my vertical line first, right in the middle, as close as I can get. I just am eyeballing it. So this is about the middle. And the way this photographer did it, you can see that the shapes are really broken down in this composition in 2 quarters. And the first shape up in the upper right-hand corner is going to be the large circle with the small circle in it. And then in this bottom section, we have some petals that are kind of coming down here. And then really we've got almost like a triangle shape going on here if you look at it that way. I'm going to draw my line down from the stem. And then if I were to look at the angles that are involved here, there's really sort of a triangle going on. If I were to break this image down into shapes, okay, there's a triangle in the negative space, which we'll talk about positive and negative space in another week. But you can kind of look for those types of details. Look for where the shapes are. Negative space, which is where there's not an object, makes a triangle here. There's a heart shape going on here. These are the things that I want you to start trying to look at your objects like with an artist's eye. Where are the shapes? What shapes do you see? Now this shape, I'm not sure what I would call this. I mean, when I squint my eyes, the first shape that jumps out at me is the negative space triangle. So, I mean, it's not a perfect triangle, obviously, but I'm gonna sort of outline that. And so you can kind of see here, this sort of forms a triangle shape in a way, or you could look at it as a crescent shape, which is the next shape I'm going to draw out of this arrangement here. There's a crescent. And I don't know what you'd call this little guy. He's just sort of you could do a triangle. This could be a triangle area. I'm just breaking it down into areas and blocks of shapes. Another sort of heart shape here going on. So when you're talking contour line drawings, look for the just blocks of shapes that you can find. I mean, this could be, I don't know, rectangular, parallelogram, maybe, if I put it in there in that way. Another sort of crescent shape almost, or a half circle. And then up here, I'm gonna call this a half circle, because really that's the block of shape that it takes up. But then you can tell it's broken down into some small triangles. So I'm going to also block those out. So when I am sketching out the composition, I want to look for the bigger shapes first and just sketch them in. And then I'll go back in and figure out where my smaller shapes are that make up the image. This is going to be filled with triangular shapes. Get a feel for that. And you can try to trace over it. If you print this off, you could break it up on paper for yourself first if you'd like. Just feel where the shapes are. And maybe these are sort of organic freeform shapes that are here, and we'll talk about that in class next week. They're not mathematical formula shapes. The other thing I want you to pay attention to, I'm doing the whole scene. So I have my flower shape, the leaves, the major pieces that are broken down here. And then I've got this big, like, just sort of chunk. And it's really a free form shape that's in my background. So I'm just going to get a feel for what that is and how it kind of is splitting this upper left-hand quadrant in half, really. I mean, it's a little bit more than half with the dark side. And then it like the shape part fills almost all of this bottom section. And it kind of blends into the horizon lines going on back here. And don't forget to add in horizon lines wherever you are drawing, just because it helps your object to feel like it's not floating in space. It gives a feel of stability and grounding your object. And that's how we're going to break this down.
All right, so now that I showed you how to block out the shapes on the composition, I'm going to show you how I did it on my paper. So I have a light sketching of what I did just a little bit before this video. And that was to first just start out lightly putting down like where the page is divided in half both ways. So vertically, just kind of eyeball where you think the middle is, and then where do you think that it is horizontally. And that's how we're going to sort of eyeball the composition as we lay it out. And so as I mentioned, like you can tell from the composition of the photo that I was working on, the sunflower is going to be in the upper right-hand quadrant. And so I'm going to start with, that's where I'm starting, is just with the small circle shape. And I am just going to rough in where the large shapes are, okay? So I'm not worrying about doing this contour style yet until I know where everything is going to fit in space. So I know that the outer larger shape of the sunflower is going to basically fill this upper right hand section. And then if you remember, we broke it down into shapes. And so I'm going to come down here and kind of figure out, okay, so I remember there was like a triangle shape going on and a larger triangle kind of reaching up and over, and figuring out just where those chunks are before I go in to do a contour drawing, because I want to make sure that I have space for everything and that it's laid out proportionally the way that I want it to be. Kind of a heart shape there, kind of a triangular shape there. Here, let's see, I've got this a little too chunky. Got like a half circle going on up in here where the spiky things are going to be. And let's see, try to remember what else. I got the triangle shape there, and then between, so from here, when I'm looking at my picture, there's also like sort of a rectangular shape being formed in the negative space. I want to get in there, and there's the crescent from the whatever that is. It looks like wheat, but I think it's just a sort of a weed thing. Actually, I see like a crescent shape between the one lower section with that other one that goes up here. So that's kind of makes a crescent shape. And then there was below the leaf a little triangle guy. And I'm gonna block out where the stem is. And Make sort of a triangle or a half circle, whatever you want to make it into, however you see the shape. Your eyes might see it a little bit different than mine. And I know that this will be, the stem is like where the middle of this is all going to be, so need to be aware of that. All right, so then I did the freeform shape too, where that's just the background chunk that takes up most of this upper left hand area, and it's going to come down, and I've got some horizon lines going on, kind of grounding this all in space. All right, so now let's start with the contour drawing part. I've got the shapes blocked out for the composition, so now I'm just going to start drawing, and I'm going to pick a point. That's the main thing you want to do, is just pick your starting point. I'm going to start at the small All right, so now I've got that part done. I'll erase some more lines in a little bit, but right now I'm going to go back through with my Sharpie and just create my contour line. I'm going to just make this pop a little bit before I add color to it. So I'm going to get a Sharpie and start again. But now the hard work is done, and I'm just going to go back through. You can look at your image if you want, or you can just trace your lines. All right, so you can still see a few light sketch lines on mine, but that's okay because I'm going to go back in and do some other things with this drawing. But this is a basic contour drawing that I created from a photo.